For 40 years she wasn't allowed to step inside that barn. Her husband said it was men's work, and she never questioned it. But on the day he died, Martha Schneider took the bolt cutter in her hands and discovered the life he had lived without her. For 40 years, Martha Schneider had been married to Heinrich. For 40 years, he had kept the old barn behind their Bavarian farmhouse locked, claiming it was his workspace, a place where women had no business. Martha never questioned it too much. Heinrich was a man of his time, private and stubborn. But after Heinrich's sudden death from a heart attack, Martha finally found the courage to open that barn. What she discovered inside brought her to her knees. Standing at her kitchen sink in Oberammergau, Martha gazed through the window at the barn that had loomed like a silent sentinel over their marriage. Her arthritic hands clutched a mug of cold coffee as the Bavarian autumn wind whistled through the cracks in the old window frames. It had been 3 weeks since Heinrich had collapsed while milking the cows. A quick death, the doctor said, for a man who had worked hard his whole life. Martha was 77 now. Heinrich had been 80. They had met as teenagers, married when she was 20, and spent 4 decades tending this land together. And yet, standing there, Martha realized she had never truly known her husband. The barn was Heinrich's sacred domain, a vast gray-brown structure with red tiles standing 100 meters from the house. It was the largest barn in the region, yet Heinrich never used it for farming. Every morning after breakfast, he would vanish inside, only to return at noon. When Martha asked what he did there, he would curtly reply, "Men's work. You wouldn't understand." Over time, she accepted it, as she had accepted many silences in their marriage. Heinrich had been born in 1943, shaped by a world of rigid gender roles. He was never cruel, never violent, but he was distant, an old-fashioned man who locked his emotions away. Their marriage had been marked by one unspoken sorrow. They never had children. It wasn't for lack of trying. Martha was infertile. Heinrich never blamed her outright, but she had seen it in his eyes, in the way he watched other families with children, in the heavy silences whenever the subject arose. The barn was sealed with a massive padlock, and Heinrich carried the only key, even keeping it on his nightstand while he slept, as though fearing she might wake up one night and uncover whatever truth he was hiding. Once, 15 years ago, she had heard music coming from inside. Children's songs. She'd crept closer, curious, only for Heinrich to burst out and scream at her with a fury she had never seen before. Later, he apologized, blaming stress, but Martha had never forgotten the look on his face that day. Not anger, fear. After his funeral, neighbors urged her to look inside. "Maybe he left something valuable," they said. "Important documents." But Martha hesitated, not out of fear of what she might find, but out of a strange sense of loyalty. Heinrich had guarded that secret so desperately. Yet she couldn't live forever with questions haunting her. Alone on the farm, with decisions to make, she knew it was time. On a gray October day, as the wind stripped the last leaves from the trees, Martha fetched a heavy bolt cutter from Heinrich's workbench. Her hands trembled as she approached the barn, but her resolve was firm. It took all her strength to snap the old padlock. The clang of metal hitting the ground echoed like thunder. She slid the heavy wooden doors open. They groaned on their hinges, and a scent drifted out. Not the musty smell of hay and animals she had expected, but something else entirely. Wood polish, paint, and something sweetly nostalgic, almost like a memory of childhood. What she found inside stole her breath. The barn wasn't a workspace, it was a world. Every inch had been transformed into a wonderland of handcrafted wooden toys. Rocking horses with intricately carved manes, doll houses furnished with tiny tables and chairs, toy cars with working wheels, shelves lined with brightly colored children's books and fairy tales. In stunned silence, Martha wandered through it all. She stopped before a dollhouse, a perfect miniature of their farmhouse, rendered with astonishing detail. In one corner she found a desk stacked with hundreds of letters, all in Heinrich's familiar handwriting. They were addressed to children she had never heard of. Lisa, Tom, Emma, Paul, Sophie. Each letter spoke of birthdays, little achievements, Christmas gifts. He signed them all, "Your Grandpa, Heinrich." Every letter was sent to the same place, St. Marian Children's Home in Munich. There were photographs, too. Heinrich, 20 years younger, smiling warmly as he held laughing children in his arms, reading stories, playing games. A tenderness glowed in his face that Martha had rarely seen in 40 years of marriage. He had paid for school fees, funded college educations. One letter from 2015 moved her most. A woman named Lisa thanked Heinrich for making her dream of becoming a doctor come true. Martha sank into a chair, tears spilling from her eyes. Who had this man been, really? The next morning she called the children's home. When she introduced herself as Heinrich's widow, Sister Anna, the nun on the line, burst into tears. Heinrich had been like a father to their children for over 40 years. "We were worried," Sister Anna said. "He never missed a Monday." 2 hours later, Martha stood before the red brick building in Munich. Inside, Sister Anna guided her through rooms filled with children's laughter and stories of Heinrich. For decades he had visited every week, bringing toys, reading aloud, paying for meals and medicine. To them, he was Grandpa Heinrich. Lisa was there, now a poised woman in her 40s, the little girl from the photographs. She wept when she heard of his death. "He was the only father I ever knew," she said. She told Martha her story. After losing her parents at 5, she hadn't spoken a word for 6 months. Heinrich had simply sat beside her every Monday, carving tiny wooden animals, never pushing her to talk. One day she finally did. Her first word had been "Opa." Others came forward. Tom, now a teacher, said Heinrich had given him confidence. Emma, an engineer, said he'd taught her to read. Paul, a chef, said he'd discovered his passion cooking alongside Heinrich in the children's kitchen. They all told the same story. Heinrich, the patient mentor. Heinrich, the loving grandfather. Back at the farm, Martha returned to the barn and searched every drawer, every corner, until she found a letter addressed to her. For Martha, if I die before I find the courage to tell you. With trembling hands, she opened it. Heinrich confessed everything. He wrote that their infertility had broken him in ways he'd never admitted. She had been strong, practical, ready to accept life as it was. He hadn't been. "I needed children," he wrote. "At first, I went to the orphanage for selfish reasons. But those children, they needed me as much as I needed them. And there, for the first time in my life, I became the man I always wanted to be." He explained why he never told her. He feared she would see it as betrayal, as proof that their life together wasn't enough. But it wasn't that at all. "I loved you, Martha," he wrote, "every day of our 40 years together. But I didn't know how to show you the man I truly was without hurting you. So I hid him. I was a coward. Forgive me. not just for the lies, but for never letting you love the real me. Martha read the letter 3 times. Her tears were no longer just grief. They were love, anger, regret, and something unexpected, understanding. 3 months later, the barn was no longer silent. Lisa stood there with her children. Tom came with his wife. Emma brought her little girl, who asked Martha if she could make her a rocking horse like Grandpa Heinrich used to. Martha smiled. She had spent the past months learning woodworking, not perfectly, but with determination. "It won't be as beautiful as his," she warned. "That's okay," the girl said, hugging her tightly. "You'll get better." The children began to call her Grandma Martha. Slowly she understood what Heinrich had felt all those years, that love multiplies when it's shared. The St. Marian home used Heinrich's inheritance to build a workshop where Martha now worked every Tuesday, carving toys and learning to open her heart. For the first time in her 77 years, she felt truly alive. One afternoon, surrounded by Heinrich's other family, Martha realized something profound. Heinrich hadn't betrayed her. He had betrayed himself by thinking she couldn't have loved the man he really was. But now, through these children, she could. That night, she sat at Heinrich's desk and wrote her first letter to the children. "I am Grandma Martha. Grandpa Heinrich is watching over you from heaven now, but I'm here, and I want to learn to love you the way he did." The barn was no longer a place of secrets. It had become a place of memory, of love, and of hope. And Martha, after 40 years of silence, had finally found her home, not just on the farm, but in the family Heinrich had built for them both.